insights on how we can go about disaster management and humanitarian aid and help the students out here to thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I actually did not know that it's another lecture. It's an extra privilege to be with you. It's always a pleasure to be with young people. If I had my choice, I would actually be a teacher. If I had a choice, I would actually be a teacher of history. But at the time when I was growing up in a middle class family back in Kerala, of course we wanted an employment, and studying history was a sure way to unemployment. So that's the reason why I ended up becoming an engineer. But I think times have changed, and people now have better choices. It's my first visit to JNU. So I'm a very frequent visitor to your neighbor IIT. I studied at IIT Kanpur, and many of my friends are faculty members here in IIT Delhi. And every time I come to Delhi, I stay there. I give lectures on engineering of disaster management, on climate change, on other matters. As a part of my job, I travel around the world, and I always make it a point to meet with the young people around the world. Wherever I go, I put a post on my Facebook and say, look, I will be in this shop, Starbucks or whatever coffee shop which is close by, and people turn up. Sometimes 2 people turn up, sometimes 200 people turn up. And for me, they are the same. So long as there are intelligent people who are interested to interact with me, I'm happy to interact with them. Because the times when there was one lecturer in the room who knew all the answers, who is better than you in something, it's over. That's past. And this is something which our teachers have not really understood. Teachers still believe that the old concept of guru having all the extra knowledge and students not having that. So these are the people who are actually scared of things. And this is not only teaching. You go to medical system, same. Doctors are intimidated by patients who actually have knowledge about their problem. So they are afraid of Google. And last week I was in Kerala and I was talking to 200 doctors, and I said, look, your future as a doctor, the way you were practicing, it's over. You have to love to learn Google, and you have to understand that patient have maximum right to know about their own disease, and then they will come more prepared. Then you have to be prepared to engage with them at that level, rather than saying, if you study Google and come to me, I'll charge 50 rupees extra. So not like that somewhere. So that's the type of interaction which I have. So therefore, I expect this session also to be similar to that. That we have I will say a few things, and then I will, expect you to ask questions, and then we take in any direction which you feel comfortable. And I may have answers, others may have answers in this room. You may have an opinion, I may have an opinion. My opinion is in no way superior to your opinion. I may have better facts, and then let's discuss on that. So with those words, I thank the Student Union for inviting me. I thank Balaji who is here, but also who came to my son's exhibition. It was organized in India Habitat Center last week. I have only one son who's Asperger's, but he's a gifted painter. So we are doing an exhibition of him. That's why I'm actually here on a personal visit. And a number of students from JNU came for that. I want to thank all of them for coming, because it's a great encouragement. And it was not only for Siddharth, it was only for many children like that and many parents like that who should know that when we talk about differently abled, etc., they are truly differently abled. And when we don't capture their skills, then the whole society loses. So the loss is not just private loss of them or their family, but so that's the reason why, that's why I'm more honored and pleased to be here. So what I will start today is by talking about what is the international architecture currently on disaster response. How is the international humanitarian architecture working right now? Then I will talk a little bit about the disaster which happened in Kerala, how it evolved, how it is managed, and where it is now. And then I will talk a little bit about the JNU, the JNU campus, and how do you make your campus a safe place? Because this is the most important thing. And if you only take that message from this, forget all about what I'm talking, I think you would be a little bit more safer tomorrow than what you are today. So this is what I hope. In between, afterwards, I'm happy to answer any questions. So the international architecture for disaster management is mainly managed by the United Nations, which has decades of history in dealing with the disaster. Some countries can manage disasters of their own, other countries would need help. But no country is really 100% prepared to deal with every disaster which they can get. Japan, for example, is one country where we know, they have a history of disasters. They have been dealing with disasters for thousands of years. But when tsunami struck in 2011, 23,000 people in Japan died. 90,000 bodies recovered, 4,000 did not recover. The biggest loss of life since Second World War is Japan. Japan has all the systems to deal with disasters. When I was there, I think 5 days later after the disaster, they were already resettling people into temporary camps. And every temporary camp was a unit of 8 houses. And 8 houses were, each house had a sitting room, a bedroom, a kitchen, toilet, etc. Middle of the 8 houses, they had a small garden with children's playground. And in front of every cabin house, they had a flower pot. This was all already set up within a week. That's how prepared Japan is to deal with disasters. But still they sought help. The help they sought was on dealing with the waste which was created by the disaster. Because when a tsunami hits a coastline, everything on the coast becomes waste. So you have the car, you have the boat, you have the fish factory, you have the petrol station, you have the train, all get pushed into a corner, into a huge pile full of disaster. Inside the house, if a tsunami comes here, the tsunami will not come here, this I can tell you. But if tsunami does come here, everything in this room, the table, the chair, the bed, the mic, everything gets piled up into disaster. In one city, I think it's called Ishinomaki, in 15 minutes, it produced 103-year equivalent of waste which the city produced normally. So how do you deal with that? The city, in the Sendai city, which was the biggest city affected by the disaster, they have a waste management center headed by a PhD. There are 50 people highly qualified, and then thousands of people on the front line. Waste management alone. But Sendai, as you have seen, helicopters are floating, small planes are floating around, the entire houses are moving. With all this, how do you deal with this massive mess of disaster waste? And this is something which they did not know. So they sought help. So the point I'm making is that everyone, small and big, would need help. The help is different. So the UN have a system. Actually, UN has a series of systems. I'll start with the first system. It's called the UN Disaster Assessment and Coordination System, UNDAC. The UNDAC system is coordinated from Geneva. What they do is to get hold of people within the UN, but also outside the UN, who have domain strength on something. Let's say they could have domain strength on firefighting. I have domain strength on environment. Someone has domain strength on telecom. Somebody has domain strength on health. So we take these people who have very good domain strength, at least 20 years of experience. There's no mandatory requirement, but typically some have 50 years of experience, and train them on a common methodology on how to respond to a disaster. So there's a language and grammar of disaster response. So all these people are trained 2 weeks. They are not trained on how to deal with disaster waste, that we are expected to have. But they are trained, how do you respond to a major disaster? How do you look after yourself? How do you communicate? What systems can you expect when you go to a country? And how do you plug into those systems? So So this is a 2-week training course, and this training is held once every year, and then we have routinely given refresher courses so that our skills are correct. And these people are then put back into their work around the world, whatever they do. So I have a normal day job as the head of environment, chief of disaster management, the UN environment system. And I get on with my normal work of training, which I'll come to later. And other people who are not part of the UN system is given a $1 contract for 1 year, so that in case they have to mobilize, their insurance is covered and they can travel on a UN document. So we are then sitting wherever in the world, and then suddenly a disaster happens, somewhere disaster happens. And there's a system called Global Disaster Alert and Coordination, I think, or Global Disaster Alert Center, I think, GDAC. I'll get the exact details. So they keep tracking all the disasters, whatever, small and big, happening around the world. And depending upon the nature of the disaster, and depending on the country where it's happening, we have an approximate idea that we may need to help. For example, if a disaster happens, which kills 100 people in India, then we know this will not come to us. But if a disaster happens with 100 people in 10 people in Maldives, we know it will come to our horizon. So it's not really about the scale of the disaster, it's also about the capacity of the country to deal with that disaster. So this global disaster alert system keep track of the disasters which happen around the world, and any time they have a reasonable indication that our help may be needed, we get an alert. So it's called an M0 alert, which says a disaster has happened in this place, please be alert. We are then encouraged to go to our common website and say where you are and how soon can you travel. So I would say, no, if I get that message now, I would say I'm in JNU, my nearest airport is Delhi, I can travel in 3 hours. And this information all go to Geneva, and they have my profile sitting there, and they know which language I speak, which passports I hold, and which domain strength I have. And depending upon the disaster which has happened, the country where it's happening, which language people speak, what's the political equation which various nationality and country have. For example, if an oil spill happens in Pakistan, I'm a domain, my domain expertise is an environment. So an oil spill, most part of the world, I would be invited. But even though we actually travel on a UN passport, there are considerations because they may not want me to go to certain areas, etc. So therefore, it won't be in first line of proposal. If needed, we do go. UN staff actually go to Pakistan and routinely work. That's not an issue. I'm just saying there are all sorts of considerations which go into it. Then when we choose a team, the initial team is always 6 people. One person's full-time job is communication. One person is looking after our security, etc. And then, depending upon the nature of this, if it's an Ebola, then will be a health person. If it's a tsunami, it will be certain nuclear person, whatever dimensions. So a team of 6 is assembled, and they are not necessarily physically assembled in one place because they are all different places. The Swiss government will make available a plane to travel to wherever the disaster has happened. That they can do in 6 hours. So in 6 hours we can travel as a team to the location. So depending on wherever on earth it is, in 24 hours we could be anywhere. Now mostly we could be before, but many times we don't have to be that early based upon disaster. So this is a UN disaster assessment and coordination system. So the 6 people arrive in a country. The first objective is disaster assessment. Disaster assessment is finding out what is the scale of the disaster. Because when you have a disaster in a country, it's always overwhelming for that country. But it may not be from an international scale, it may not be that big a disaster. So we have to calibrate how big is that disaster on a global scale, and what is the capacity which the local government has to deal with it. Are there any specific capacity gaps? Is the problem health? Is the problem food? Is the problem accommodation? Is the problem something else? So this is the very initial estimate which we have to make, and which we will make in the next 48 hours. And there are standard methodologies for doing it. So Based upon this assessment, we call out our initial call for assistance to the global community. We say disasters happened in Nepal, earthquake, primary need is shelter and medicines, and it goes into the system. At that point of time, and even before that, as soon as something happened, there are many agencies around the world, including the country, where people are willing to help, and the help start to come in. Many times, even before we land, the media will already be there, and so will be people who are willing to help. Lots of people. I was in Haiti 1 week after the earthquake, and there are 1,400 organizations which came. 1,400 organizations, not people, 1,400 organizations which came to Haiti to help. Many people don't know what they can do. They are just, okay, we are here to help. And people actually walk into me and say, sir, can we help? So we say, how can you help? Sir, I don't know. Then I said, the best way you can help is leave all your money and go. Leave the money. There are other people are here who have specific domain skill who can help you. Because when somebody who no domain knowledge is coming to a disaster situation, you are actually not helping. You are actually causing trouble because you need a place to sleep. You need a toilet, at least a certain time in a toilet, and you need food, and you need shelter, etc., etc. And which ideally should be held by someone who has a domain strength to help. So I'm just saying that the willingness to help, the number of people who are willing or coming to help is enormous. And so is food, and so is other things. So help start to come, and that's where our second job is. Many times, most countries will have no idea that such help will come, what will come, and how to deal with it. After every disaster, anywhere I have gone, I have seen the airport is full of food and water and blanket and this and that and the other. While in Nepal there was so much that planes had problem parking, that much of food. But at the other end, there are people who don't have it. But the system doesn't exist there to receive it and streamline it and send it to the right people. And this is where our help is number 2, is in coordination. We are able to establish a system whereby we coordinate the international assistance which is coming and the local systems which are there who can then direct this into specific locations. And it is because of this global experience that when this disaster happened in Kerala, I will talk more about the disaster in Kerala, but I just want to say that this time Kerala, we had sequence of disasters, starting from a flood in a place called Kuttanad, which is a below the sea area. Then it's migrated into the hills as a series of landslides. There were 4,000 landslides, and then the biggest dramatic flood event which happened in August. So there are 3 events. So even when the first set of events happened in Kuttanad, which got flooded, I started saying, please don't send material, please don't send material. And people are very annoyed actually. Actually people abuse me on Facebook, and even my best friends. They said, you have no idea. Why are you saying this? And I said, I'm saying this because I've seen. Send money, don't send material. And people will not listen because it always feels nice to send material. A young child, breaking her piggy bank and going to shop and giving a piece of cloth or something. It makes a very nice story. But at the practical end is a big problem. I have been in countries where countries send a plane full of medicine to post tsunami. Now, medicine is one thing where internationally medicine is not portable. You cannot take a medicine from America and use in India like that, legally. Of course you can take it, but if America sends a plane full of medicine, Indian legal system will not allow it to be used because it has to be registered. So all the medicine comes, it holds space, it holds the landing space of the aircraft, and then you have to dispose it, you have to burn it, and you have to spend money for that because it cannot be used. Same about food. You have a tremendous amount of food coming. It's not coordinated well. Food is highly perishable and so on. So the recommendation which we always make is after the 48 hours, give money. And money should be spent at the most local point as possible. So if Delhi is affected, then the money should be spent as close to Delhi as possible. So sending water from Bombay to Delhi is not a good idea because probably water is available in Ghaziabad or in Gurgaon or in other areas. Why send water all the way? Because it has a carbon footprint. Whatever additional money you spend on transportation can be converted to water. People don't realize this. People are still into giving cloth and sometimes old cloth. Very bad idea. Never do it. So this is the first two jobs: disaster assessment and coordination. And that team, initially group of 6, can be expanded into modules of 6. So you can have 12 people, 18 people, and so on. If there are disasters which are affecting multiple countries, then you can have one team in every country and so on. And once the international disaster machinery rolls in, such as the 1400 organizations, then you have a huge coordination challenge. For example, there will be at least 100 organizations who are dealing with children. Okay, we all want to help children. Some are psychosocial support, some on sexual abuse, some on all sort of things. How do you divide their work? And how do you ensure that everyone gets support? So, in many countries, what happens is that there will be television news that there's a problem in this city. So all the NGOs go into that area, and there may be other areas which are not covered. So that's where the second UN involvement comes. UN has a system called cluster coordination system, whereby all the interventions which you have to do after a disaster is divided into many clusters. So you have the health cluster, you have the children's cluster, you have the women's cluster, you have the HIV/AIDS cluster. It's actually considered a cross-cutting team. Infrastructure cluster, agriculture cluster, and one UN agency or one of the agencies like International Red Cross take lead of this cluster, like shelter. Red Cross is leading the shelter cluster. So any agency which come into a country who will provide assistance on shelter would then report to the Red Cross. Red Cross don't decide how much funding they have. Red Cross will not tell them, cannot tell them, but at least the information is exchanged. That these are the problems in this country, this is what is needed, and these are the places where things are happening. So then they can choose. If they then choose to go to a place where someone else is acting, you cannot prevent them from acting, but at least people can work with complete information. So this is called the cluster coordination system. So me, coming from the environment sector, have a responsibility to deal with the environmental cluster, and this is considered what we call a cross-cutting cluster. So in every sector, be it health, agriculture, telecom, infrastructure, we have a role to play. So this is the second important activity which the UN engaged after disaster. And this could go on for a few months till the time things get settled, depending upon the nature of the disaster. Tsunami, the 2004 Indonesian tsunami was the biggest disaster in our collective memory. 262,000 people died in 16 countries, one day. You can imagine the scale of operation. World Food Program had to start feeding 250,000 people every day, 3 meals, in 24 hours in Indonesia. Like that. So the scale is completely out of proportion. So you have, and the cluster meeting there were held in football grounds because there are so many actors who were sitting around. And they all come with their own mandate, they all come with their own interest. So you have to learn to deal with it. You also have a back end. All these international people who come also need food and toilets and wash and this and that and that. So there's a system whereby the government of Sweden has agreed to provide all those support to the international people. So we go there to help the people. But then someone has to look after us. So the Swedish government come with a full set of tents and toilets and everything, whatever is needed. And we get a let's say like a train berth. So it's a multi-story, not multi-story. It's a tent in which there are bunk beds, and you get one of them, and then you get food. At least you have some sort of guaranteed food. And when you come in the evening, then you are in a secure environment. So you are not worried about your own safety. And this is something which people in India still don't understand, people in many countries don't understand, around us don't understand that we are professionals. And therefore, let's say, we always say that, look, this person sacrificed their life for saving someone else. That's not how professionals operate. Professionals operate because they have a skill to do something. So when we go, we don't work 24 hours for 4 days as a doctor, for example, because then on the third day you start to make mistakes, and whomever you are trying to help, you are killing them. So we need help, we need rest. So we have time schedule where we are told, okay, you can work up to 16 hours first day, but then come down, then you take rest, and there is someone looking after you. However, when you are in that type of situation, your mind starts to work differently. You want to spend more time. You want to spend all the time with those affected people. If you are a doctor, you have 10,000 patients who need medical help, you don't feel comfortable taking rest. But we ensure that people take rest. And this is not, in our system, it's not there. Our fire force and people are encouraged to just go into the middle of the problem and then, work, sacrifice their life, which they often do, which is not how it should be done. You should look after yourself as well, because otherwise you cannot look after other people and you lose a very, very valued professional in that term. That's the other job which we do by cluster coordination, and then we have back-end support. The third work we do is to count losses. So when you have a disaster and it costs huge amount of loss, and every country has a different way of counting those losses. Now UN has developed our own system of counting losses, and this is called a post-disaster needs assessment. The post-disaster needs assessment count not only the losses, but we also count not only the damage, but we also count the loss and the needs, and I'll give the difference. So if you have a restaurant which was close to a river in Kerala, and if it got flooded, and all the chair got washed out, then the damage to that restaurant is the cost of the chair, discounted price of the chair at that. So if you had the chair for 10 years, and if you bought them at 300 rupees, then the chair only cost 200 at that point of time, so the damage is somewhat limited. But till the time the person have new chairs, they cannot run the restaurant. So every day is a loss of business. So that's a loss. But to restart the business, that person needs chair. So you need 100 chairs at the market price. So that's a need. So you need all the three information together to estimate how much the economy has lost, how much the individual has lost, how to put the country back on its foot. So we do a post-disaster needs assessment. We have done that for the first time in India, in Kerala this time. The draft report has been submitted to the Chief Minister last month. It will be out in a week, and I encourage any of you who have any interest in this topic to please read that report. It's the first time in India it is being done. Because in addition to, traditionally we do the normal one, the houses loss, the roads, but we never counted the loss of culture, for example. So when you have a temple which is flooded and it had pictures on its architecture, what is that loss? It's not counted. It can't be counted in a PWD way. To reconstruct the wall, it will cost this much. You cannot count like that. In Kerala, we have two typical situations. We have one place called Aramula, where there's a very traditional, thousands of year old technology of making a mirror from pure metal, not using glass and mercury. It's polished metal. And this is going from family to family. And there are many small workshops. Each of them is a small workshop. And I was told 39 of these workshops got washed out. And many of those families may not be able to recover without specific support. Now, mirror making these days is, a functional mirror is no longer an issue. Most people don't even need a mirror. You can use a selfie to look at your face. But there is a cultural value in the mirror making. So how do you capture that? There's another place called Chandamangalam, which is a place well known for handloom. And that was completely flooded out as well. What's the value of that? That brand lost to Kerala. What's the value of that? So these are the new things which we introduced. What's the value of the topsoil which has been lost and washed out in a forest? How do you capture that? So all these have been included in the report. Not everything can be captured monetarily. It can be theoretically, but not within 10 days when we do the work. But we factor those in so that these are not neglected. At some point of time, someone can look into the economic value. So that's the third service we do. We do the post-disaster needs assessment, and this is done jointly between the World Bank and the UN system. And we come out with a number. Kerala, we have come out with a number for 27,000 crore is the total damage and loss, and it will take 31,000 crore to rebuild Kerala. In Nepal, I think it was 4.5 billion US dollars is the total needs. And in a typical situation, what happens is that the country will then start do a donor conference, which means they will present the need before the international community and say this is what you have lost. Anyone who wants to help can help. And countries do help, sometimes as grants, sometimes as loan, and many times as combination of them. For a state, we cannot do that, but at least the number is there. As you know, the official policy of Government of India is that we do not seek international assistance in the times of disaster. That's our official policy, and that's been a policy for a very long time. But at least we know the needs, and we can, if assistance is offered, there's a possibility to accept. So that's the third service which we provide as a United Nations. And it is not the UN which do all the international aid architecture. The international aid architecture is primarily governed by member states who have huge amount of money which is earmarked for responding to disasters. And they give to different countries based partly on the humanitarian needs, partly on the international politics, which you understand more than I do. They have, in certain countries will give more programs than others. For example, India is number 1 donor in Afghanistan, and I think number 2 in Afghanistan and number 1 in Nepal. And we have our own reasons for that. We may not be the same if the disaster happens in a faraway country. But India has been increasingly, we also have been a very generous donor in other places. So this is about the international architecture. UN has a role of what we call a provider of last resort. Initially we provide these type of services, then the international aid system kicks in and they put all the money and the resources. But if in a certain country, for whatever reason, a certain segment is not looked after, but the UN has a mandate to ensure that that support is provided. That's called the provider of the last resort mandate. So if environment is not covered in Mongolia, then we have to provide that service. Just because nobody is interested in Mongolia, nobody is interested in environment, we should not leave that open. That's the mandate which we have. We deal with about 10 to 12 disasters per year at the global level. The number of disasters is thousands, but at the global level we deal with 10 to 12. 80% of them are hydroclimatic. So drought, flood, hurricane, forest fire. And this is on the rise. And this is purely climate change footprint. So it is happening. And it's very clear for us. And even in my own time in the UN, 15 years, you can actually see an increase in flood, hurricane. It's happening. Hurricanes are happening, increasing frequency, increasing intensity, so much so that the hurricane scientists are now thinking whether there should be category 6 hurricane because it's going beyond the scale. Cities in Europe is increasingly finding floods as well as drought and forest fire, because the whole idea of green city where you have a green belt around the city, is now becoming a little bit of a trouble. Because in the summer, the forests are catching fire and cities are in danger. So people are rethinking as to, is that a good idea to have a green belt around? If green belt, what should be that green belt, and so on and so forth. So climate change is a big challenge which we are dealing with, and I'm sure again you are all up to date on it. The latest UN report on it is saying even with 1.5 we are going to be in big trouble. So I have actually not read the full report. I look forward to reading it. I think it may be very unpleasant reading, but something which we should read nevertheless. I will talk a little bit about Kerala. As I said, there are 3 disasters in Kerala. I must start by saying that when I started writing about disasters in Kerala in 2008, hardly anybody was interested in this topic, disaster. I was sort of standalone. And I have many nicknames in Kerala. As we mentioned, I have a award from the Sahitya Academy for Humorous Literature, so people can make fun of me. I have a license, so I'm associated with the name disaster in Kerala. But increasingly, disasters kept happening. Last December, we had the cyclone Oki coming. Nobody in Kerala in our generation have seen a cyclone, heard of a cyclone. Cyclones are always something which is happening to someone else, in Japan or Philippines or US.
The
East coast. Exactly, Andhra. But never in Kerala. So we were completely shocked. And then we had Nipah, the health emergency. And then we had this disaster in Kuttanad. Kuttanad is an area in Kerala which is, for those of you who are familiar with Kerala, it's south central Kerala. It's an area which is below the sea level, which was converted into agricultural paddy field in particular by creating an artificial bund and pumping the water out. That area got flooded, June, July. And then the rains continued, started having landslides, hundreds of them, eventually thousands of them. And then in August 2018, series of flood events. We have 44 rivers in Kerala, 41 going westwards and 3 going eastwards. All of them crossed the banks, all the 44 crossed banks. We have 60 major dams, and I think 34 of them had to be opened. First time in history. Our biggest dam, Idiki, Chardoni, that complex, the shutter had to be opened for the first time after 26 years. 1992 was the last time the shutters were opened. It is a huge event. It is unprecedented in Kerala's history. United Kerala, we never had a disaster this size. 483 people lost their lives during this period of time. And the losses I already mentioned. 1.2 million people have to leave their homes and go to camps. 5.5 million people are affected. These are huge numbers, even by global standards. And then there was a response. And this response was in many ways exemplary. The way the young people got into it is something which we are all very proud of, and something which you should also be very proud of, but you should also take note of it, because disasters, something which I tell every audience is that disaster is not something which happens to other people. Disaster is something which will happen to you one day when you are totally unprepared for it. So therefore, this is not how other people dealt with it. The young people in Kerala were not prepared for it, but they could organize very quickly and effectively respond to it. And I think that's partly because of how we have learned to network with people whom we don't know through social media. Our previous generation probably could only work within existing hierarchies, and probably they had better expectations of the government, what the government could do. Whereas young people don't have that type of expectation, and they have the tools to get on with it. And when the government systems worked or did not work well enough, the young people took over. We had a simple problem. We don't have a unique number like 101 or 112, where we can call if someone is missing or lost or something. So when the disaster happened, thousands of calls started going to the local 101, and it all got flooded. Floods of calls. And people are not getting through, and everyone was getting angry, upset. The government didn't know what to do. So what the government did was to make available all the numbers of the district collectors and superintendents of police and everyone into public domain, so that people had someone to call. But this created a problem because all the senior officials' phones were jammed with calls, and every time somebody came live and said, "Look, I'm in this place. Water is coming up." That was shared 1,000 times, and people in 1,000 places sitting in Geneva, and in Delhi, in Bangalore, were all calling Balaji Stack and Balaji Stack and Balaji Stack. So, and everyone will pronounce his name differently. So they are thinking maybe there are 100 people stuck in somewhere, around. So it was a complete mess. And this was sorted out because people inside there could not sort it. So this is sorted out by Malayali diaspora of technicians who are technical experts who are sitting in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Abu Dhabi, in London, in Australia, and US, who very quickly established a flow chart. When calls come in, they started eliminating duplication and verifying, cross-checking. So many of these unprecedented things happened, and we are documenting this so that it can be projected to the world. Very good practice. The way the diaspora responded, exceptionally well. The way money started flowing into the Chief Minister's Relief Fund, unprecedented. I think it went from a few hundred crore to about 1,000 crore in a few days. But then you had the problem of food coming in and this coming in and all the airport getting flooded. I had call from Australia saying, should I send some rice to Kerala? I said, Australia, rice to Kerala? Because people don't understand what, because they want to help. Australia full of rice, okay. In Haiti was a rice exporting country. They were not rice producing country. When the earthquake happened, everyone sent rice to them. The local farmers had no market for their rice. The only thing they could do was to leave farming and go and live in the refugee tents. And they became refugees themselves. And this is what your wrong type of aid do to the society. And that's why I said don't send items. But people still did. In Dubai, I was stranded in Dubai for 2 days. And every supermarket, and as you know, Dubai is full of Malayalis themselves, had truckloads of things piled up, and every passing person, be it a Filipino, be it someone from US, they will see collection for Kerala, so they will buy something and throw. And there are agents who are prepared to ship it to Kerala for free, and it all came. But then every collectorate and every train station became a problem. So anyway, the response was good, but in terms of providing material support, I think now people have got the message. After people understood how bad it is to have too much goods coming in, now that message has got through, and I am once again documenting that for the people. We had challenges, of course. Inclusion was always a challenge. For example, how do you deal with migrants? Kerala is now a state full of migrants from other states coming into Kerala. So when you have emergency warning going out, most of the warnings go out in Malayalam or English, but many people or the migrants actually don't speak either of them. Bengali is a dominant language among my people from Tamil Nadu can more or less follow Malayalam. The issue of differently able people. When you are staying in a house, you are more or less managing, but if you have to move to a camp, a disabled person has a different set of problem with old people in Kerala. Many people, young people are abroad, their families are back home. They are extremely well off financially. But when the real situation, something like this happened, they don't know. I was talking to my mother-in-law earlier today, and she was saying when the flood rushed in, they have a single-story house. They have all sort of things, every electronic item you can imagine. But every other house was also busy saving their stuff and moving to upper story. They could not count on anybody. No, they have 3 children, all of them are not possible. So everything lost. So old people had a separate set of problems. Like that, there are problems of inclusion. But I think by and large we managed well in the response stage. But then there are questions as to whether this could have been prevented, whether this disaster which happened in Kerala was a preventable disaster. And I would always say yes, it was a preventable disaster because our philosophy is that every disaster is preventable. You just have to think ahead of it. Kerala had a similar flood event in 1924. But when we were young, our parents used to talk about the 1924 flood. But then it went from the collective memory of the society, and this is how it was. Society, even biggest disasters, go out of society's memory in one generation. Whereas war, we keep for 1,000 years, because that forms part of our identity. Disaster is not part of our identity. So we forget. And then we don't build our land use planning based upon this. So this is how it could have prevented. If we knew where the flood reached in the 1924 flood, and then we could have thought differently. In few places in Kerala, they had marked the flood of 1924. Few temples and few churches. So in 2010, I responded to a flood in Thailand. And I saw how high, how fast, and how far water reached. It was a, eye-opener for me. The stories which people told, that they never expected it to come, they never expected to rise so fast, and so on and so forth. So when I went back home, I told my people, look, this is what could happen to us. And I said, do you know of any place where it is marked? And then some people said, yes, it is marked here, here, and here. So I went and visited these places. And I could not believe, because they were so far away from any water body, and there's still a lot of water nowhere. And I then took that information to the higher up and said, look, imagine if a flood of the same kind will come, who will all be flooded? And I said, it will come for sure. It's 100%. The flood is going to come back for sure. And after that flood, we built our factories, our airport, our schools, building houses next to the river became a most popular thing. So I knew all of them will be flooded, and I did say that. But, people don't assume the worst will come. We don't assume that worst will come to Delhi, for example, now. And it got filled. So to that extent, yes, it was predictable. But there is a question which people asked us to whether the dams were opened at the right time or the wrong time, could it have been avoided, and so on and so forth. And then it became a little bit of a political question as to the opposition government. The initial days, of course, everyone was together. And then it started splintering. And I then studied this question in very detail. I looked at every dam. Now, the rain which happened was so unprecedented that in most of the dams, 90% of the dams, I actually have the exact number, the amount of rain received in 3 days was more than the total capacity of those reservoirs. So even if the reservoirs were empty on day 1, it would have flooded by day 3, and so the flood could not have been eliminated in most places. There is a place downstream of Pampa river. The reservoirs were bigger, but then there the problem was that there was Kuttanad downstream which was already flooded, so they could not have released the water, because if they released, any day they released, they would have exacerbated the flood in Kuttanad, so that's not possible. So the only place where you could actually make an argument that you could have used the reservoir more creatively is in the Periyar basin and not other places. So to say that this flood is entirely caused by dams is incorrect technically, and it's very, statistically, mathematically very easy to prove it. Kerala is now in the phase of reconstruction, and the government has formed many institutions to deal with the reconstruction. Our own recommendation is to have a single institution because we have looked at many models around the world, what works, what doesn't work, and we have recommended some, made some suggestions. The government has made a different architecture for it. The government has formed a advisory committee. I'm part of the committee. I'm trying to help the government in whatever way it is possible. And hopefully, in 3 to 5 years, we will recover. Rebuilding 19,000 houses fully damaged. Most likely, we'll rebuild them. The government already has identified 4 lakhs rupees per house, and maybe between 5 to 6 lakhs we'll be able to rebuild it. But that will not eliminate disasters in Kerala. That will just recreate all the disaster risk which was existing before. The disasters have to be prevented, then you have to fundamentally look at land use planning very differently. To fundamentally look at building construction differently. You have to fundamentally look at buildings and houses differently. Whether you build houses next to the river and what type of land use planning and control you can have, you have to think through. You already big enough trouble bringing this Gadgil Commission issue in Kerala. So that is only in the hill. Now if you were to control land use in any other part, it's going to be even more of a political dynamite. Whether the political parties will be prepared to take it, I don't know. The way we build our houses has to be different. On the hill, the plain and the coastline, and in Kuttanad, where below sea level, we build identical building. I'm a civil engineer. I was never taught that you should build differently in the 3 places. And I don't know if you saw it, there was a house which cost more than 1 crore, which sort of broke down upon on the high ranges. It's also split the hill. My friend told me a very sad story. My friend has a house in the foothills, in the lower plains. He has a beautiful house. So one day, his father saw someone coming and taking pictures of his house from outside in a sneaky manner. So he went out and said, why? He said, I saw your house is very nice. I want to build something like this. So he said, come in and take as many pictures as you want. So he took the pictures, gave the name of the architect. The same architect went and designed the same building upon the hill for this guy. And that building is collapsed. So are we prepared to change that type of house? And the third and most interesting thing for me, for those of you who are not from Kerala, people have the habit of building houses. I have the habit myself. We have 1 million houses lying vacant, 1 million houses lying vacant. Half of them apartment. You go to Ernakulam any day after 9 o'clock and look in an apartment block and you'll see half of the buildings empty, no light. And you go to some place, 90% of the houses are lying vacant. And you are still building houses and you are still cutting down trees and you are still digging rock to build the houses which you don't need. It's a sort of national pastime. When will we change that? One of the recommendations I have made is to put a tax on these vacant houses and use that money to build houses for who are lost. I would stop the Kerala story there and I'll finally say about JNU. As I said, we all make the mistake that disaster happened to someone else and we will go to help them. But that's not how it works. Disasters happen to us as well. The first thing we do in the UN when we get someone in this magnificent team is to ask them to write a will and say, okay, when you die, what should happen to your assets? The second thing you do when you are in that team is to take a sample of your DNA by taking of your hair and depositing, so that if you die in a bomb blast and no one can recognize you, then they at least have an idea. So at least we can send an empty coffin back home, saying that this person is dead. Because we have to be prepared, because this is exactly how it works. So you should assume that something could happen in JNU as well, and something could happen in your personal life as well. In India, you have 168,000 people die every year in road accident alone. 168,000. That's more than the population of many countries. We kill more people. Highest number of road traffic death in the world is in India. We don't have the highest number of people in the world. That's China. We don't have the highest number of automobiles in the world. That's the United States. But we still kill more than what China and America kills together. the statistical chance that one of us will die in a road accident in India is 12 in 100,000, which is very high actually. 12 in 100,000. The best possible now is something like 2 per 100,000. So without doing anything, we can still save a lot of lives. In Kerala alone, I keep giving this number. 4,000 people die on the roads, 1,500 people die drowning, 800 people die falling from height, 500 people die in the train tracks, 300 people die electric shocks, 300 people die in fire incident. About 8,000 people die per year in accidents which are completely avoidable, which is about 700 people per month, which is more than twice the number of people who died in this huge disaster which we have been talking about. So we should be prepared for this. Are we prepared? Is JNU prepared? Whether you have a disaster management plan, how well is your safety handled? I think you should ask this question. I will be very happy to assist you at any level to look at a campus safety management plan, a campus safety audit, a campus disaster management plan. And I tell in Kerala that in Kerala every public meeting starts with a prayer to Pattada. In Geneva, we start every meeting with a safety briefing. Okay? In this building, if you are sitting, if there's a fire, this is where you run. Or this is where you not run. I'll explain why. And if you have a building collapse and if you run, the first thing you do is not to go home, to run and stand outside so that people know that you are safe. Otherwise what happens is that everyone knew that Balaji was inside. But they don't know Balaji because Balaji has then gone to a coffee shop. So they will then look for Balaji and kill themselves. And this happens. So instead, when you get out, the first thing you do is to go out, stand there, head count, Balaji in, you are in, okay, now you go. Have you ever done such an exercise in your hostel? A fire in your hostel. I was in another prestigious academic institute in Delhi last week. By mistake, I entered the fire stair. The stuff with furniture. Today, I actually checked your library. You are better. But I think that's just an accident. Probably another day it would have been different. Think about it. Plan for this.
Fire exits are long.
Fire exits are long. See, extremely dangerous situation. And I'm sure one day, when something happens, someone will be suspended or dismissed or something. But that doesn't happen. So, I'll finally say that increasingly in campuses like Delhi, you are not only worried about safety but also about security. Acts of terrorism. And the reaction you should have is exactly the opposite. So if there's a fire, you run outside. If there is a gunshot, you don't run outside. Okay. So again, and I sit in Geneva, one of the safest places in the world, but I'm also listening. So the moment we see what's happening in Europe, Paris, Brussels, we train ourselves. Okay. A gunman in workplace, what do you do? And then there's a separate set of protocol. Again, I'm just saying that don't assume these things will never happen to you. These things can happen to you. Be prepared for that. And I'll just finalize by saying that there's a separate set of issues regarding only women and their safety as they travel, as they're staying, as they're on campus. So any of you among women who actually want to know more about it, one of you should write to me, I'll send you the guideline. But next time I'm in Delhi, please invite me, only women, and of course men are welcome to join, but I'll be very happy to talk about women and their safety while traveling and working. Thank you very much.